And I hope. Yes, indeed. Hello and good evening. Welcome, everybody. Welcome along to the Library of Mythical Ireland. I'm Anthony Murphy. I'm delighted to welcome you back to our occasional episodes, our occasional series, Book Talk. We've been doing live Irish myths since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was, I think, on the 13th of March, 2020. So far, there have been 147 episodes of Live Irish Myths and about 12 episodes of Live Irish Myths in Conversation, in which I feature a guest. I'm delighted to say that occasional series will also continue. There are lots of names on my list of people to be conversed with, and that should happen before too long. I have to show the chat here to make sure that I'm seeing the comments. Stephen Walker is the first in the house tonight on Facebook. Barbara Barney close behind. Hello, Barbara. Just double checking. Forgive me for a moment that we are in fact live on YouTube. Yes, we are. Yvette Tillema says hello. Hello, Yvette. Good evening to you. Yeah, so it's been a good while since we did Book Talk. And as you know, I was interspersing these episodes with Live Irish Myths in the hope of providing something of a bit of diversity and variety in the subject matter. There being over 900 books in the Mythical Ireland Library, I'm glad to say that there's enough material to keep us talking for a long time. Who else is here? Daisy Peters is in the house. Hello, Daisy. Good evening to you. Barbara Murphy is here. Hello, Barbara. Great to see you. Glenda Stark Serena is in Canada. Hello to you and greetings to all our friends in Canada. Janet Moran. Hello, Anthony and Tua. I feel better already. Well, hopefully you're going to get your fix of normality now, and hope you enjoy what is to come. Mariana Dunn Kinja says, hi all, and it's good to be here. Brilliant. Shall we show the first of the evening? Stephen gets his little spotlight, and Barbara and Yvette. I love the interface here, the way I can do this. It's nice. I suppose it makes people feel that they're part of something. Oh, loads more now. Oh, crikey. Better hurry up. Jules Cousins. Hello, Jules. Good evening to you. And to Steve Martinson. Hello, Steve. Welcome along. Deborah Milot McKinnon is in Boston. Hello to all our Boston friends, the Bostonians. Philomena Breen is in Stranraer in Scotland, just across the water. As I always say, I could nearly lean out the window and shout across at you and you might hear me. Rowan Grove says hello from Denver. Hello, Rowan. Hope you are keeping well. Oh, hang on a second. Happy belated birthday. Am I right in saying it was your birthday yesterday? Lovely time of year to celebrate your birthday at the time of the longest days. Beautiful time of year. Endless twilight here in Ireland at the moment, which is fantastic. Sue Prenter is in the house. Good to see you. Also, good to see you, Sue. Good to have you along. Paula Snow Queen is giving the old wavy hand. Hello, Paula. Welcome along. Who else have we got? Patricia Loughran McTague says, headed to YouTube while I work. So happy to catch you live. Brilliant. Great that you can watch while you're working. Super stuff. Sharon Donahue is in Southeast Alaska. Thank you for the program. It's my pleasure, Shannon, as it is to welcome you all the way from the far side of the North American continent. Mandy McCurl says, hello, good to see everyone. Hello, Mandy, who is, again, just across the water. I could shout across at you. Sandra Boothroyd says, welcome back. Yes, the live streams have been a little bit less regular of late. You'll have to forgive me for that. But I think you know the reason. Daisy Peters says, good evening, my Tua. Indeed, indeed, indeed. And Scott Doherty. Yay, you're back. Greetings from County Clare. And as am I right about this? Hang on a second. I just have to think about this. Not the first of the Tua that I met face-to-face, because that would have been the likes of Tom King. But just, am I right in saying the first of the non-resident, those who reside in other countries, member of the Tua that I met, and a great pleasure to do so the other night here in the Boyne Valley. A great conversation was had with yourself and your husband. Paul Campbell is in Galway City on the west coast of Ireland. I hope the weather is good there, Paul. It's a beautiful, balmy, sunny day here today. It's fantastic. Doris O'Hara says hello to everybody. Hello, Doris. Great to see you along. Fiona Wright is in West Limerick. Hello, Fiona. Fáilte isteach. Grab a caithear. Agus sí síos. Grab yourself a cup of tea or a dram, maybe. Barb Jordan says she's glad to be here. We're always happy to have you along, Barb. Anne McCallum. Hello, Anthony, and fellow book lovers from a hot, humid, sultry, stormy southwestern Ontario. Well, how many adjectives can you use to describe Ontario? Well, it deserves all of them and more. Elizabeth Monaghan is in Virginia in the USA. Fáilte, Elizabeth Bannacht. Great to see you. Kaylee During is in the house. Good evening, Auntie. I'm finally able to catch you live again. It's been a while. Much live and hugs from Holland. Sláinte, I presume you mean Gra. Much love indeed. Thank you, Kaylee. And it's lovely to see you on the live stream. Alan Hoskins is in Ballina-Killaloe, County Tipperary, home of Baal Boru, the fort of Brian Boru, High King of Ireland. Lillian Cruz says hello from Rio in Brazil. Hello to all our South American friends. Fantastic to have you along. Brilliant stuff. Mandy McCurl has joined us on YouTube. Kieran Gormley is in Coventry in England. Hello, Kieran. Welcome along, Trenonawa. I hope you are keeping well. Patricia McTague, whose comment won't come up. One moment. Hello, all. Happy to be able to get on while live. Brilliant stuff, Patricia. Great to see you. Archaeoastronomy Database, whose name is Tyrrell, says, hello, friends. Summer is in full swing. Yes, indeed. The only thing is, as you all know from watching the summer solstice talk last Monday, which wasn't a live Irish Myths, but was on similar themes. We are now on the slow descent of the sun back to the winter. But anyway, we're not going to talk about that, and it's going to be a while before we notice the shortening of the days. Well, I can listen-ish, says Patricia, and pop up the video occasionally. That's okay. We won't tell the boss. Bree Nee says, hello, Anthony and Tua from Dublin. Catching you early for once. Brilliant stuff. Bree Nee, Fáilte. Christina O'Shaughnessy or O'Shaughnessy, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, says, greetings from the Geneva area. Brilliant stuff. Hello to all our friends in Switzerland. Geneva is in Switzerland, isn't it? It's not in Austria. Yes. Moment of serious doubt there. Tom King is in the house. Well, good evening, Anthony, and all the mighty Tua. Hope all in good fettle this fine summer's evening. Dram topped up, and it's story time. Good stuff, Tom. You're very welcome. I still have the cooker ring around the neck. The swan pendant, of course. Swan spiral pendant, no less. Full Irish, who's Gary, is saying, Giagich, great and good too. Another fine day on the sod. I spent my day off at Lughenge. It's a special place. Sounds nice. I don't actually know where that is. But, maybe you'll post some pictures on the Mythical Ireland community. By the way, I couldn't get the stream on the Mythical Ireland community, so perhaps if one of you is on Facebook, you might share the stream from the Mythical Ireland page to the Mythical Ireland community. Adina Spark says, hope everyone is well and good afternoon to you. We are in fine fettle. Susan McLean is in Ohio. Good evening to you. Good afternoon. Hope everything is well in Ohio. Mary Hanrahan. Hello, Anthony. I'm so excited for this lecture as I bought an original publication of the book from a Cork bookseller signed by Prager. Cannot wait to read it. Brilliant stuff. Mary, mine is a reprint. A 1980 reprint, I think. And that's a wonderful treasure you have there. I've been dipping in and out, and it's very, very, very good. Mark Gordon says hello from Iowa. Hello, Mark. Good evening to you. Welcome in Fáilte Isteach. And Rowan says, you're quite right. My birthday was yesterday. Well, happy belated birthday to you, Rowan, and I hope you celebrated in fine style. Virginia M. Regan Hawkins is in California, all the way out on the West Coast, and I hope it's living up to its sunny billing. I hope it's nice and sunny in California. Jason says, it's a long time since I caught you live. Fáilte from Tennessee. Nice to see the Tennesseans in the house this evening. Roberto Reboiro Diaz, and I'm never sure if I have the pronunciation right. Have a nice summer, present June or St. John's month. Yes, indeed. The 24th being St. John's Day, the 23rd being St. John's Eve when the bonfires are lit. Movanwe Millward is in the house. So great to be here. I'm cooking, but listening in. Well, come here, listen. Maybe the opportunity will present itself in the not too distant future for a Tua get together, and somebody will have to cook for us. Just saying. Hint, hint. That might end up being me. Oh, I apologize. It's pronounced Tyrell, not Tyrrell. I am suitably corrected in this regard, Tyrell. Thank you for the update. Philomena Brina saying hello to Christina from Scotland. Philomena Galvin, hello, lovely to hear you live. Brilliant stuff, Philomena. Hope you enjoy it. Hope that perhaps you're able to watch while basking in that lovely sunshine. Susan Mullen Lacernas is glad to be present for this. We're glad to have your presence. Michelle Terrell is in rainy Colorado, and she's got a happy face. So maybe the Coloradonians are happy to have rain, because I believe that's a very dry part of the world, isn't it? Brilliant stuff. Daisy has also switched to YouTube. I'm not sure if there's a problem with the Facebook stream, but anyway, there's good that you have the choice. Todd Despera is in the house and says, hello, Anthony and folks. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Hello, 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 hello. Lexi Erickson is in the house. I didn't see you there, but saying hello to Tom. Hello, Lexi. And Movanwe, can't wait for the get-together. Should be fun. If you're up for a vegetarian meal, well, try me, I mean, I am fond of my animal protein, but if the food's good enough, it will be eaten, George, Philomena's grandson, George, says hello. Hello, George. Hello. Welcome along to Book Talk. I hope the subject matter doesn't bore you too much, but anyway, depends on what age you are, I suppose. Quick update before we begin the book talk to say that, first of all, official apologies for the recent lack of live streams. The main reason for that is that the Boyne monograph was occupying a huge amount of my time. It took quite an expenditure of effort to get it written, a concentrated effort. But I'm glad to say that not only is the text complete and the design done and the ISBN number and even the cover and the barcode and all that, the text was given to several third-party proofreaders, some of whom are Mythical Ireland patrons, by the way. If you want to become a patron, there's the link there at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Please do consider supporting the work of Mythical Ireland. The corrected proofs came back. There were a few typographical errors and a few stray commas and full stops and that sort of thing. And I am doing at the moment, as of earlier this evening, I began what I would hope to be the final proofread. And all going well, fingers crossed, if it's not sent to print tomorrow, it will be sent to print on Wednesday. So I'll keep you posted. Anyway, there's the inner cover, as it were. Boyne, the goddess of the River Boyne and the Milky Way. And, all the detail of text, copyright, first published 2021, ISBN number, all rights reserved, all that stuff. And I would show you the text, but then maybe, I just want you to buy it. Where you can get it, the only place you will be able to get it, for the moment anyway, as things are opening up, I'm trying to get my books into several bookshops. For instance, the visitor centre at Ishnach is stocking some of my books. You can get Return to Segish there. You can get the Finn monograph, which is the first in the series of the first in the Mythical Ireland monograph series. You can get, if you want, they're signed as well. But if you want signed copies of any of my work, go to mythicalireland.com, and in the menu along the top, if you're on your phone, that's a drop-down menu. gallery and shop and go into books and you'll find it in there. You can pre-order the Boyne monograph at the moment, and depending on the turnaround from the printer, it should be available in about a week's time for dispatch from Mythical Ireland headquarters here in the Boyne Valley. And we post worldwide, so it doesn't matter where you are. Well, if you're in Timbuktu in Mali, there's a possibility it could take a while to get to you. But if you're in California or New York or Munich, for instance, or London or Madrid, it'll get to you much quicker. So, yeah, delighted to say that I'm just doing one more proofread of that myself, and it has to be said that I'm actually still finding just one or two little things that need adjustment. So it's always worthwhile doing that last proofread, even after you've made the corrections and suggestions of improvements from the others. As I always do, George is delighted that I said hello. Brilliant. Super stuff. Michelle says pre-ordered hers last week. Brilliant stuff, Michelle. That's great. Thank you very much. And John Main is in the house. Hello, John. Didn't see you sneaking in the door there. Good evening to you. Hope you're well. And I'll just make a tiny adjustment to the focus to keep focus on things. Erica Rivertree is in the house from Louisville in Kentucky. Hello, Erica. Great to see you. Helen Hirsch Chatter is here and is saying, good afternoon and good evening, friends. And indeed, good morning if there are any viewers down under in Oz. We say hello to those Coloradoans. There you go. Coloradoans. I was close, wasn't I? There you are. Brilliant. You learn something new every day. Every day is a school day, you know. Joe Butler's in the house in a cool and grey Colorado. Will we send some sunshine? This is apparently, according to the meteorologists, this is going to be the best week of the summer so far here in Ireland. And there's Peter Woods, who says, well done, Anthony. I was in the National Museum on Saturday. Noticed you had 2 books on the shelves for sale. Brilliant. Delighted to hear that. That's a lovely place to, a lovely endorsement of the work. Mavanwe is looking forward to reading it. Brilliant stuff, Mavanwe. That's fantastic. Oh, there's a series, according to Jason, on Amazon Prime Video called Secrets of the Irish Landscape that followed this book and the work of Robert Lloyd Praeger. I highly recommend it. Brilliant stuff. Thanks for that, Jason. I did not know that, so that's something maybe people can look up. As I always do on Book Talk, before I get to the main event, I show you some recent acquisitions. I'm always building up a collection here, despite the fact that I'm running out of room for them, but let's not talk about that. An unusual one, maybe. But anyway, of general interest, Priest, Politics and Society in Post-Famine Ireland, a study of County Tipperary, 1850 to 1891. I'll be honest, the later part of Irish history, from the Norman conquest to modern times, is an area of our history that, first of all, I used to have not so much interest in, and secondly, that I don't know, traditionally haven't known a lot about. I am catching up slowly, and I'm actually finding it very interesting because it's important. It's important that you study, especially medieval Ireland, in the context of Christianity and the monks and the scribes, and what happened to the kings and chiefs and the clans and the plantations and the wars and everything else. One that I personally consider to be a treasure to add to my collection of books relating to the work of C.G. Jung is C.G. Jung Psychological Reflections, which is actually an anthology of his writings compiled by Yolanda Jacobi, who I think was a colleague of his for a good long time, which would give you a sort of a good broad scope of his works. And as you know, Jung has a particular view on the function and the importance of mythology, which I think was kind of taken up by Joseph Campbell, and the two of those are kind of, from my point of view, greatly inspiring figures in what they have said and written about mythology. And I've already actually started reading this, and I'm really, really enjoying it. A fabulous piece of work. A peculiar one that I picked up today. Well, peculiar. Robert Friend is in the house. Hello, Robert. Falcha, good evening to you. Kristen Gray Taggart is here as well. Work has kept me away from listening recently. It's kept me away from live streaming recently. And it's great to see you, Kristen. Welcome along. Tom Byrne is in the house. Hello, Tom. Welcome along. Yes, bird migration. You might be saying, bird migration. But I actually have not a massive interest, but a growing interest over the last 5 to 10 years. In the past decade, I've become very interested in bird life. In the wintertime, I feed the birds on the tree here in the garden. And I've learned quite a lot about birds. But the other thing, too, is that don't forget the whooper swans have been sort of a major element of the Cygnus enigma. And, I think that the swan mythology pertaining to the Boyne Valley is interesting in that regard because they come here from Iceland in the wintertime. And I'm also very interested in the plight of the curlew, which is a bird that has visiting and breeding populations in Ireland, but which is in steady and sad decline. So I reckon that's going to be an interesting one. This isn't a sort of a Dorling Kindersley book. It seems to be very, very comprehensive. It runs to a total of almost 600 pages, has a very comprehensive reference and bibliography section, and is full of beautiful color images, and I'm really looking forward to dipping into that. Another one to add to my small but growing collection of Morgan Llewellyn books, and this one's called Brian Boru, Emperor of the Irish. And you may know that if you are a patron, that you at this moment, if you sign up as a patron, you will be able to see an 80-minute, a 1 hour, 20-minute interview conversation that I had with Morgan Llewellyn at her home in recent times. A prolific and very successful author who has published dozens of books. I should add, The Greener Shore. And I have, as a result of my visit, this one I hope will make you jealous. I have a copy of Bard, inspired by Amergin and the Milesians. And Amergin is a hugely inspirational figure for me. A signed copy, signed personally to me from the author. And finally, in terms of collections and growing collections, you'll all be familiar, I hope, with John O'Donoghue. His most famous, or his best known work, is Anam Cara, but I've been slowly building up a collection of his work in hardcover with dust jacket, and I'm glad to be able to say that today I have added Divine Beauty to my collection of John O'Donoghue hardbacks. So, for instance, a while back I showed you what I consider to be an absolutely beautiful volume, and they're all published in the same format, same size, same sort of idea. Benedictus, a book of blessings, a fabulous, fabulous piece of work. I also have Eternal Echoes and Anam Cara in hardback, and I have several of his works in paperback. Anyway, so there you go. Robert says, sorry I've not been with you lately. It's a funny thing, Robert. I haven't done, I did a special talk last week for Loud Libraries, which was streamed. But the previous fortnight I missed purely because I was just really bogged down, happily bogged down, but busily bogged down with the Boyne monograph. So anyway, tonight's, what time are we on? 20. Oh my God. How does time fly? Will you shut up, Anthony? It's no wonder on YouTube afterwards, people who didn't realize that it was a live event, who see the subject matter and go, oh, that looks interesting, and they click on and they have to listen to 20 minutes of saying hello to people. And then they leave sometimes nasty complaints saying, I got bored and I left because I couldn't stand you talking to your friends. Just wanted to hear about the subject matter. Anyway, little introduction to Robert Lloyd Praeger and the way that I went. First, to say that this book was originally published in 1937. Mary O'Halloran, I'm not sure if it's an original first edition that you have. If it is, that's fantastic. It was reprinted several times, but this is a reprint from 1980. But I believe it retains the exact typography of the original. So it's basically a facsimile of the original, which is brilliant. Robert Lloyd Praeger was an interesting man. He was born in County Down in the 19th century. Definitely not the 17th century, Anthony. He was born in 1865. He was the son of a Dutch linen merchant, hence the name Prager. He was educated at Queen's College, Belfast. He was librarian of the National Library of Ireland from 1920 to 1924, and he had the great esteem of being the president of the Royal Irish Academy from 1931 to 1934. And in case you're not familiar, the Royal Irish Academy was the place where they held all the antiquities, all of the artifacts from archaeological excavations in Ireland. The collection was eventually donated to the National Museum of Ireland. So all the stuff you see, for instance, the Tara brooch and the Arda chalice and the torques and all the gold and all that was originally held by the Royal Irish Academy before the National Museum of Ireland was established. He is best known as a botanist through his earliest researches, though his earliest researches were on geology, and he took part in many archaeological investigations. His books include Natural History of Ireland, A Populous Solitude, Some Irish Naturalists. He died in 1953. There's a picture. Little bit, hang on till I just focus in here, get to see if you can see that. There's a bit of a stain on the back cover of the book, but I don't mind stains on secondhand books. It just means that they were well used, well read. So Prager journeyed across Ireland as a botanist, as a geologist, as an archaeologist, as an anthropologist, and his journey was mostly on foot. Very rarely by car, because he says, you'll hear it now anyway, he says, you can't see much from a car, sometimes on a bicycle, but a remarkable eye for detail. I'm going to read a little bit of the introduction. Then what I plan to do is going to read a little bit from his, the section where he talks about Sligo, in particular Carrow Keel, where he took part in some of the archaeological investigations, along with the very, very famous R.A.S. McAllister I think that was 1911, if I'm not mistaken. And also a section about Newgrange, where in the 1930s, he took part in what was the first proper modern excavation at Newgrange, when himself and McAllister, with Leask overseeing, tried to expose all of the curbstones at Newgrange. And I understand, without having read it, but I understand from memory, from reading it before somewhere, that they had to cease and desist after a while because the landowner wasn't too happy with what they were doing. So I'm going to start with the way that I went to chapter 1 to give you a sort of an introduction. And I think you'll find, as I did, that the prose is beautiful. The man was a good writer. He was a wonderful naturalist. He had an eye for detail, but he was also able to communicate this in a wonderful way. I hope not too many people are having difficulties with Facebook. A few people have switched to YouTube because Facebook is stalling. If that's the case, I do apologize. I do apologize. The Not Chosen, remind me what your name is. I do apologize. I don't always remember the handles, and that's my that's a sign of my advancing age. Yes. The preface. Sure, we'll read the preface as well. Let my voice ring out and over the earth, through all the grief and strife, with a golden joy in a silver mirth. Thank God for life. These lines of James Thomson express better than I can what has been in my mind as I was writing this book. It is, indeed, a kind of thank offering, however crude, for 7 decades of robust physical health in which to walk and climb and swim and sail throughout or around the island in which I was born, to the benefit alike of body and soul. I just love him already. As soon as you start reading, you just fall in love with this man. You just know that this was a man of the world, but a man with spirit. But lest it might appear too egotistical, my little human praise is disguised as an account of the beautiful land in which I have spent my septuagesimal holiday. Yes, his 70th birthday, or around the time of his reaching of the year of 70 years of age. And chapter 1 begins with a verse from Dora Sigerson Shorter. He made you all fair, you in purple and gold, you in silver and green, till no eye that has seen without love can behold. Fantastic stuff. No problems with Facebook for a lot of people, which is good news. Excellent. Good. Excellent. The way that I went was an Irish way, with extra-orbital aberrations. He also has a very good command of the language, especially in later years, to the extent of 1,000 or 1,500 miles. It was from the beginning a way of flowers and stones and beasts. When I was old enough to toddle, my father had to put a fence around a garden patch in front of the house because I picked all the blossoms, and I knew belemnites and harebells and flint flakes before I was 5. That obsession has remained with me throughout life, and I make no apology for the predominant place which it will occupy in what I am about to write. For we are ourselves creations of nature, and spend our lives amid natural objects. Who does not wish on a fine day to escape from the town into the country? And when you get there, it adds enormously to your interest and enjoyment, if you understand something about the architecture of the hills and plains, and about their teeming population of birds and butterflies and trees. So I launch my paper ships boldly in the desire to stimulate an interest in natural things. I venture to hope that, away down the river, 100 miles or more, other little children shall bring my boats ashore. Isn't that fabulous? I have traversed Ireland to and fro, from end to end and from sea to sea. Mostly on foot, for that is the only way to see and to get to know intimately any country. Sometimes by cycle, seldom by car, because the motor travels much too fast for the serious observer. Used as one uses the train for rapid transit to some desired spot, it is often a boon beyond price. It can take the town dweller rapidly beyond the zone of bungalows and the less sturdy far afield. But for the nature lover and for the mind jaded with the meaningless noise and hurry of modern life, with the rush and glare of the interminable hours, quiet wandering on foot along brown streams and among the windy hills can bring a solace and a joy that is akin only to the peace of God that passeth understanding. And what has to be borne in mind in relation to this is that this was published in 1937. Like, this is long before we had the urban conglomerations that we have now. This is before the streets of every Irish town. Most of the towns in Ireland are medieval in street layout, with narrow streets and clogged up traffic. Drogheda is a very good example of that, I can assure you. But in the 1930s, there were very few motor cars. What would Prager think if he was to venture through the towns and cities of Ireland today? He would be even more desperately to remove himself from the urban facade and to get out among nature. And of course, Natalia picks up on the quote, which I agree wholeheartedly with: who does not wish on a fine day to escape from the town to the country? And in Ireland, we're still blessed with a beautiful landscape and relatively unspoilt landscape, despite the progress in quotation marks, the progress of the modern era. But finite and worldly creatures that we are, we cannot exist long on that high plane. Hunger and a westering sun soon drive us back towards the abodes of men. And in the evening, the bus or clattering tram is often a godsend as great as was the welcome freedom of the heather in the forenoon. And so the following chapters, built up chiefly of impressions gained in many years wayfaring in Ireland, must recognise the interest of the populous places as well as those of the countryside. But this is not a guidebook, heaven forfend. Rather have I, in memory, wandered over the country, picking out places and things that have interested me and which I have hoped may interest others. Nor is the Ireland I describe like that of many recent writings, the Ireland of the motorist, who, like the wind-borne mirroring soul of Matthew Arnold's Empedocles, 1,000 glances wins and never sees a hole, looks once and drives everywhere, and leaves its last employ. There are plenty of books for him. It is rather the Ireland of the man who goes with reverent feet through the hills and valleys, accompanied by neither noise nor dust to scare away wild creatures, stopping often, watching closely, listening carefully. Isn't it wonderful? It's really fabulous. This is, I mean, very much gives you the impression of what you might say was an Irish David Attenborough, you know? You can just imagine this man, a modern version of him, being a TV personality, showing us all the wonderful wild things and the nooks and crannies of the landscape of Ireland that most of us would walk by in a heartbeat, not knowing what profundity lies there in the hedgerows, you know. Fantastic. Kathy May Deo's in the house. Hello, Kathy May. Welcome along. And Mariana Dunn is in from Virginia. Hello, Mariana. Great to see you. Fantastic. Only thus can he, if he is fortunate. Of course, back then everything was written from a male perspective, but of course we include the females, the ladies, you may wish, you know, to do likewise. Make friends by degrees with the birds and flowers and rocks. Learn all the signs and sounds of the countryside, and at length feel at one with what is, after all, his natural environment. And I hold that in this mood he will also be better fitted for due appraisement of the many monuments of man's industry and faith that he will meet in this Ireland of ours, be it a cairn of the Bronze Age, a medieval church, or some marvel of modern science. I should also point out at this stage that back in the 30s, and even up to the time of the beginning of the excavations at Newgrange in the 60s, it was believed that Newgrange and Carrowkeel and all those ancient monument, those passage tombs and chambered cairns were Bronze Age, but of course carbon dating pushed them back to the Neolithic. Tess McKinney has joined us from Kansas. Hello, Tess. You're very welcome along. Hello, Kathy May. Hello to you. Brilliant. There is no need to begin with any general description of Ireland. That has been done over and over again by hands more skilled than mine. But it may be desirable to recall a few topographical features which have affected and still affect much that is within the country. There is, first of all, its unique position, an island out in the North Atlantic, doubly cut off from direct continental influences by intervening seas. At the same time, it lies, along with the adjoining and larger island of Great Britain, on a shallow shelf, projecting into the ocean between Spain and Norway, so that a slightly higher level of the land, by spilling the water off this shelf, would allow, and has allowed at certain periods in the past, free immigration from the continent. These times were too long ago to have affected human affairs as we know them, but they had a considerable influence as regards the peopling of the land with the animals and plants which still occupy it, and possibly as regards movements of the earlier races of man. Next, there is the unusual nature of the surface. Ancient crumplings of the Earth's crust have resulted in the formation of mountain ranges in the coastal regions, leaving a broad, low plain in the centre. Easy access to the interior has consequently been limited to gaps in the high rim, thus fixing trade routes and the position of coastal towns. But free dispersal over the central parts has been possible once the coastal barrier was passed or evaded. Sheila Gunn is in the house. Hello, Sheila. Welcome along. Fáilte. And Kerem Gogas has joined us. Hello, Kerem. Great to see you in for the book talk, and I hope I'm not missing anybody. If there are people watching on the Mythical Ireland community on Facebook, I do apologise. I was unable to connect the live stream to that page tonight for some reason, and therefore I'm unable to see your comments. Let me just quickly check if there's anybody there who I haven't seen whose comment perhaps should be noted or at least mentioned. I don't see immediately any. So good. And thank you to Joe Butler for sharing the video. Thank you, Joe. This has profoundly influenced the effect of the various human invasions which Ireland has endured, tending to push pre-existing cultures not into an inaccessible centre, as in most islands, but into the mountain fringe. Witness the present and recent distribution of the native Irish tongue. Again, geological vicissitudes have produced an astonishing variety of rocks, as compared with most areas of similar size. This has given us delightfully varied scenery and also different kinds of soils, with obvious repercussions on human life. The wholesale mixing up of superficial deposits caused by the moving ice of the glacial period has tended to more uniform and also better soil conditions than would otherwise have been the case. Climate also intrudes itself strikingly in Ireland. Yes, it does. You got that right. The position of the island relative to the warm Atlantic results in high rainfall, cool summers, mild winters, and much wind. These factors influence all life within the island, from man down to mosses. This peculiar position is also at the root of that most delightful of Irish climatic phenomena, its ever-changing cloud effects. Always looking for the silver lining, Prager seems to have been, always beholding the beauty in what comes, even if it's bad weather. So different from the monotonous and more settled skies, whether cloudly or cloudless, which characterize continental areas. The western hills and the clouds, which are their legitimate accompaniment, are inseparable. The eye is carried upward from the hilltops for thousands of feet into the infinite blue. He has a poetic style of writing as well, doesn't he? He doesn't really write as the scientist. Uses lots of very nice words, multisyllabic words, but there's some sort of poetry in what he writes, which I like. The cloudland, there's a poetic term, is indeed so wonderful a creation that Ireland would be a dull place without it. Here it is almost always with us, vital to our enjoyment as the landscape itself. And if frequent condensation and consequent precipitation is the necessary corollary, sometimes I see a word and I know how to pronounce that, Anthony, don't trip over it, you know how to say it, to the frequent temperature changes which give us our snowy, cumulus and colourful cloud curtains, we can afford to take with grateful hearts whatever comes. As J.W. Riley sings, it ain't no use to grumble and complain. It's just as cheap and easy to rejoice. When God sorts out the weather and sends rain, why, rain's my choice. I don't know what the tune of that song is. Perhaps there are some among you who recognise it and give us the air of it. As they say, yes. Robert Friend points out something which is very important. Kerem Goga says, oh no, wind. No, not flatulence, Kerem. The other wind. Robert Friend, sorry for my puerile sense of humour. Robert Friend says, no such thing as wrong weather, just the wrong clothes. Yes, perhaps before we leave this evening, I will tell you a couple of my jokes. Perhaps not. Perhaps the most marked effect of the wet climate is the vast development of peat bog on the plains, which has rendered 1/17 of the lowlands of Ireland useless for the purposes of agriculture, but has provided the people with a widespread and almost inexhaustible supply of fuel. It is curious to speculate what would have been the history of the treeless, coalless, rainy western areas had peat not been present almost everywhere. A marked result of the marginal distribution of high ground is seen if the river courses are studied. The streams which rise on the seaward slope of the mountains are short and rapid, while those whose sources lie on the inland side have mostly long and devious courses, and their mouths often lie many times further away from their springs than does the nearest sea. This is true, for instance, of the River Boyne. Do you know that the River Boyne, when it emerges from the springs and the streams of the hill above Carbery, Sheenachtan, as it's called in the mythology, they take a southwesterly course. So the Boyne, where it enters the sea here at Drogheda, here at Inverculpa, is northeast of its source. But the initial course of the river is southwest. It heads in the opposite direction initially before looping northwesterly before heading northerly and eventually northwesterly and easterly. Interesting stuff. And I had to include a very short chapter at the outset, at the start of the Boyne monograph, the forthcoming, soon-to-be printed Boyne monograph, about the sort of a geographical description of the Boyne River, and that's how that came about. It's about 70 miles, but if it was to run straight from the well to the sea, it would run easterly across the land and would probably only cover half the distance. The Shannon, whose basin occupies over 1/7 of the whole of Ireland, is a case in point. Its source is distant 24 miles from Donegal Bay. The river is 214 miles long, and its mouth is on the confines of Kerry. The Bann, whose length is 97 miles, rises within 7 miles of Dundrum Bay in County Down, and of course it empties out into the Northern Sea above the north coast. Ireland does not extend through a sufficient range of latitude to show a marked difference between north and south, and there is actually a greater amount of divergence between east and west. I might argue that. I think the temperature is generally a bit warmer in Cork and the likes of Wexford than it is, for instance, in the likes of Donegal and Antrim. The combination of maximum rainfall, but who am I to argue with Robert Lloyd Praeger, who knew his stuff absolutely? The combination of maximum rainfall, maximum exposure, and a minimum range of temperature which one encounters along the Atlantic seaboard produces effects, especially as regards vegetation, which are very noticeable and of much importance to agriculturalists, horticulturists, botanists, and zoologists. If we imagine Ireland as it was until some couple of thousand years ago, before drainage and peat cutting had affected the surface, we get a striking picture. The central area in particular was little more than an archipelago, ridges and knolls of firm ground set in a sea of shallow lakes, deep swamps, and wide peat bogs. Interesting stuff, isn't it? And remember that if you go all the way back to Neolithic times, the only way to ingress, as it were, the only way to arrive at monument complexes such as Brunabonia was by boat, and they were located at the complexes that is close enough to the sea. Traffic within this region must have been much constricted. No doubt the frequent coincidence of esker ridges with present-day roads gives a hint of past conditions. In other words, they took the high ground. You take the high road and I'll take the low road. Anyway, I'm going to continue on. I want to get to the sections dealing with the archaeology. I hope that's given you a suitable interest to Praeger's wide open eyes, wide open ears and senses, and the wonderful ability that he seems to have possessed to write all this down and to communicate it in such a way as to be truly appreciated by those who are reading or listening. You know, fantastic. Let me just quickly check if there are any comments that I've missed. I don't think so. Anything of significance? Good. Let us progress then. I have marked these pages. So we're suddenly in Sligo, which is, I might add, a beautiful part of the world. Yates country. And my good friend Martin Byrne, who runs the website carrowkeel.com, who is a tour guide at Carrowmore. We've been friends since the year 2000. Martin has a passion, an interest, and a wonderful level of scholarship for the history, the archaeology, the prehistory, the mythology of particularly the Sligo region that surpasses anything I've seen in what you might call a non-professional or non-academic person. If you're ever out that way, always make sure to look Martin up. He's a wonderful guy and very, very knowledgeable. Very interested in the astronomical alignments too, which is obviously a particular interest of mine. But Martin might be perhaps something of a modern equivalent of Robert Lloyd Praeger. Take the Collooney Road from Boyle, which rises at once to cross the Curlew Hills. You get lovely views of Lough Key and the Lakey country to the southeast. And on passing the summit, a fine panorama opens on the opposite direction. Lough Arrow, which is from the Irish Loch Arvach, Arvus Lake, 5 miles long, broken up by promontories and islands. Out to the northeast, the long dark ridge of Braliv, which he puts as a question mark, Bra Shliv, but we now know that the Brickleave Mountains, I think we know, or are we certain of this, is from the Irish Brakshliv, meaning the speckled mountains, possibly derived from the idea that it was speckled with cairns, which is interesting because one of the 4 hills at Loch Crew, at the Loch Crew megalithic complex, is called Slieve Rua Red Mountain, but it's also called Carrig. What's it called? It has completely escaped me, but it's got Brack. Is it Slieve Brack? Or is it Knock Brack? Or is it Mulla Brack? It's one of those, but it has Brack in its name also. And I often wondered if that Brack name was derived from the idea that they were speckled, the hilltops were speckled with these man-made cairns. And the Arigna Hills desolating, referring to the rapidity of the river. Arigna desolating, referring to the rapidity of the river. And rising directly from the western shore of the lake, the strange flat-topped limestone hill of Carrow Keel on Ciarva Chael, narrow quarter, 1,029 feet, which presumably is its maximum height above sea level, its elevation. EDT says, good morning, very late to the party, so delighted to catch you at this ungodly hour of the morning. I presume, Edie, please forgive me for not remembering, but I presume you are one of our friends in Australia, on the other side of the world. A very good morning to you and a good evening here from a bright, sunny and warm Boyne Valley. With the higher limestone dome of Kesh Corran, which is from the Irish Ceish Corran, the Wicker Bridge of Corran, at 1,180 feet beyond it. These 2 hills have, during the last 30 years, yielded much information concerning the past. The first in relation to life and burial customs in the Bronze Age, and of course in Prager's book, where you see Bronze Age, you're talking about the Neolithic, and other as regards the wild animals which roamed Ireland during that and preceding periods. Carrig Brack. Yes, it's Carrig Brack. I apologise. I'm remembering it now. I should never have forgotten such an important detail. Lard Dooley would be rapping me across the knuckles for my lack of my sudden lack of knowledge in that, my loss of memory in that regard. Carrow Keel is a hill of peculiar and unusual construction. For the large flat top, a square mile or so in extent, is cut up by parallel rifts, straight gorge-like hollows running north-northwest and south-southeast, which intersect the plateau. Many of you been to Carrow Keel? I wonder, maybe just say, yes, I've been, you know. What an extraordinary landscape. A beautiful place. If you look up my YouTube channel, which is Mythical Ireland, youtube.com/Mythical Ireland, I did a video called Sligo, A Megalithic Odyssey, which was published 7 months ago now. I think I made that last August, September, late in the summer, towards the autumn. And that will give you, if you haven't been, that will give you a good idea of what it's like. It was kind of misty and foggy up there that day, but an extraordinary place. Beautiful too. Sligo, so gorgeous. And on almost all of the little promontories in which the portions of plateau terminate stands a stone cairn. I happened on this curious place when engaged on field work for the Irish Topographical Botany in 1896, and was greatly struck by the curious topography and by the number of cairns, some of which had clearly never been opened. 15 years later, yes, indeed. So that was 1896. 15 years later is indeed 1911. I was correct earlier on. Yes, indeed, he would, Joe. Lara is fabulously knowledgeable of the Loch Crew landscape. Adele Perth has joined us. Good morning. Delighted to catch her live and see so many familiar faces. Good morning to you, Adele. Happy Tuesday morning to you. I was just saying to another viewer whose name I suddenly forget, for which I apologize, Edie, who I think is also in Australia, a very good evening from the Boyne Valley, where I'm glad to say it is beautifully balmy. It's bright, it's sunny, it's dry. There's hardly a breath of wind. It is a gorgeous evening. The sun is going down behind the rooftops here, and it's fabulously warm. All the windows are open here. If you hear noise, that's just from the neighborhood. Don't worry about it. Pass no remarks, because I need the windows open, otherwise it'd be stifling in here. Yes, 15 years later, when RAS McAllister and ECR Armstrong and I planned a campaign of archaeological digging, the queer cairn-topped ridges of Carrowkeel came back to my mind, and a visit to it decided us to make it the site of our first excavation. I should just interject there to say that some of the bones that were retrieved from the cairns of Carrowkeel in that 1911 investigation by McAllister and Armstrong and Prager was later lost, and in recent years found, and DNA testing and carbon dating was carried out. And it has been found that some of those who were interred in the Carrowkeel cairns were distant relatives of those who were buried, well, NG10 as he's known, who was buried in Newgrange. It was a fortunate choice, for the place proved to be one of high interest. A survey of the hill showed us that the flat rifted top had on it 14 burial cairns, 2 ruined dolmens, and a group of some 50 circular stone foundations, the remains of a prehistoric village. The cairns were built entirely of the local limestone, and under the action of the weather, the outer blocks had broken up into material resembling road metal. Lovely, a fresh winter's morning here, says Adele. Brilliant. Queen Maeve's cairn, says Mary. Yes, don't forget, if you're in the vicinity of Sligo town, do not, well, if you're near Carrowkeel or especially Carrowmore, it's only just a couple of miles up the road to Queen Maeve's cairn on Knocknarea. What a fabulous place. Oh. I'm going back there. At the earliest opportunity, I'm going back there with my camera and my drone and my notebook, and I'm just going to explore. It's so beautiful, sublimely beautiful up there. Well, the day I was there happened to be really sunny. It was fabulous. Examination showed that the peat which now covers the hill was formed subsequent to the building of the cairns. This accounted for the great amount of stone, often in the form of large blocks, used in the structures. For when they were built, the hill was bare of covering and no doubt thickly strewn with the wreckage of the limestone, as in similar areas in Clare, Galway, and other places. Karst, I think, is that how you refer to limestone landscape? Karst. The exploration of the monuments, which occupied 3 visits, was of great interest and gave abundant results. On the very first day, we discovered the hidden entrances to 2 of the intact cairns, which proved to contain not simple kists or cysts, kists I think is how it's pronounced, as we had expected, but beautiful cruciform chambers, 8 to 10 feet high, like that of Newgrange, but smaller. We should here also mention that, yes, more video tours, please, says Helen. Yes, I will do my very best. It's on my itinerary, says Movanway, for the next Irish trip. Yes, it should be, absolutely, without question. It should be pointed out here that these were probably the first ingresses, as it were, into the interiors of these monuments, not just in the modern era, but probably since prehistory. So these were pioneering works, but again, there's always the vandalism aspect, that in peeling back the layers and pulling down the stones to unblock the entrance, you're destroying layers of archaeology. And who knows what modern archaeologists, given the same opportunity, if Prager and McAllister and Armstrong had left it alone, what they would be able to tell us about Carrowkeel. But anyway, we're glad that he saved the bones. The spectacularly vandalistic excavations of Douth did not endow us with such fortune in terms of artifacts and material, organic material especially, human bone, etc., by which we might have been able to not only date the burials, but to tell more about the DNA and the familial relationships. 8 to 10 feet high, like that of Newgrange, but smaller. Ground plans of 2 of them, taken from our report, are reproduced here, figure 3, which I will just show you briefly. Sorry, I apologise, just while I get that ready. There's the cruciform plans of the chambers, figures 2 and 3. Sorry, figure 3. In the first opened, Cairn G, there was an entrance passage, a polygonal central chamber, and 3 polygonal cells around it, evenly disposed. Several sill stones divided up the entrance passage. I'm glad to say that I ventured into both Cairn G and, was it Cairn H or Cairn K? One of them is inaccessible because it's too small a space to crawl into. But I was in the interior of 2 of them in that Sligo Megalithic Odyssey video, if you're curious and you want to see what it looks like in there. Several sill stones divided up the entrance passage, and a sill separated the central chamber from each of the side chambers. Between the sill stones, each section of the floor was paved with a large slab. The roof was formed of large overlapping slabs, sloping outwards. It was a most symmetrical and beautiful piece of architecture. I had the privilege of being the first to crawl down the entrance passage. Wow! And I did so with no little awe. I lit 3 candles and stood a while to let my eyes accustom themselves to the dim light. There was everything just as the last Bronze Age man had left it, and again, let's substitute Neolithic there for Bronze Age. 3 to 4,000 years ago. We now know that was 5,000+ years ago. A light brownish dust covered all. The central chamber was empty, but each of the 3 recesses opening from it contained much burnt bone debris. All of that, of course, is gone today, with flat stones on which evidently the bones had been carried in after the bodies had been cremated in strong fires outside. There were also beads of stone. Of course, we cannot extract DNA from cremated bone, but there are uncremated fragments found in Irish passage tombs, hence the DNA sequencing, the sequencing of the genome of NG10 and some of the Carrow-Keele individuals, and others such as those found at Poulnabrone in Clare. There were also beads of stone, bone implements made from red deer antlers, and many fragments of much decayed pottery. On little raised recesses in the wall were flat stones on which reposed the calcined bones of young children. This brief description gives a sample of the construction and contents of the more complete cairns. We also got implements made from bones of bear, wild boar, and ox, and 2 complete urns of food vessel type. The bear, of course, became extinct in Ireland, as did the wild boar. The wild boar being a very important food source in the earlier part of the prehistory of this island, notably the Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age, or the hunter-gatherer era. How are we doing? Is everybody okay? The other cairns showed much variety, some with no chamber or burial at all, some with a single small kist, and one, to be mentioned immediately, of quite unique design. There were burnt interments and also unburnt. There were many white stones, such as are constantly associated with Bronze Age burials, beads and pendants of jasper, steatite, serpentine, a seashell, a pebble bored by sea animals. Veronica Casey's in the house. Hello, Veronica. Lovely to see you, and make yourself comfortable. Alexi has just ordered the book. You have to stop this, Anthony. I just bought 7 new 7-foot-tall bookshelves. I'm totally redoing my library as you recommended. The ones I use the most, and Ireland takes up the first 4 shelves. Sigh. Brilliant. Delighted to hear it. I mean, I'm not delighted to hear with your space struggles. We all have them, but delighted to hear that you're expanding your library. And remember, when you expand your library, you expand your mind. And maybe your heart as well. Where was I? Yes. But the gem of this great cemetery was the cairn, which we called F. This contained a magnificent chamber of unique and complicated design. It consisted of a well-built, entrance passage, a polygonal chamber with recesses cut off by sills, and a second larger chamber beyond with 3 separated recesses. And in this, most remarkable of all, a slender pillar stone in the centre line, 5 feet in height and 7.5 by 9 inches in section. Over this, the roof rose to its greatest height, some 16 feet above the floor. The unfortunate fracture of a large slab at some bygone time had brought about a great collapse, and we had to remove tons of stuff to clear the chamber. Another accident had snapped the standing stone across near its base, but had not impaired the sanctity which apparently was attached to it, for we found the ashes of a burnt human body laid on the butt end of the prostrate part. The architecture of this monument was of most massive character, slabs up to 4 tons in weight being used in its construction and its design, and especially its inner sanctuary with the standing stone is without parallel. In general interest, the Bronze Age cemetery, Neolithic, of Carrowkeel is equalled only by the more famous ones of Brunebonia and Loch Crew. None of its sepulchral chambers approaches the regal proportions of Newgrange, and the rock scribings that form so remarkable a feature of both the great Meath monuments are entirely absent at Carrowkeel. On the other hand, the Carrowkeel group displays a greater variety of design, but the main interest of its exploration lay in the fact that there was no evidence that its cairns had been opened and ransacked long since, as in the other places. Yes, so indeed it seems that Prager et al. Were the first entrants to those sacred spaces in the modern era. Most of them appeared to be intact, even when ruined, and they gave an important insight into the burial customs of the Neolithic Bronze Age people, assuming that the apparent absence of any disturbance means that at no time subsequent to the period of interment have these chambers been robbed. Their contents tended to explode the popular idea that at least the more elaborate of the Irish cairns contained, along with the human remains, golden torques or lunulae, or other contemporary treasure belonging to those who are buried in these imposing mausoleums. Of course, we know now that that would have been impossible because the Neolithic cairns were built in pre-metallurgy days. The monuments are grand, and there may have been elaborate funeral rites, but a few trinkets alone appear to have accompanied the actual sepulture. I have been tempted to prolong these notes on Carrowkeel because they formed the first important archaeological dig in which I was privileged to take part, and because I still recall the thrill of successive discoveries. McAllister, Armstrong and I subsequently carried out other excavations, a crannog near Tuam, a curious Bronze Age interment in the form of a ring fort and with a small central sepulchral kist guarded by a slender pillar stone 17.5 feet high near Naas, and that's in County Kildare. And after the Great War and Armstrong's lamented death, the very curious settlements of Ishnach and Toherstown, and the cemetery of Killeen Cormac with its wealth of Ogham stones, but none of them had the fascination of Carrowkeel, and none yielded more important results. So I'm going to skip on then to the section dealing with Brunebonia, and this will be our final little bit of reading for the evening. I hope that you've been enjoying yourselves so far. I'm not familiar, Tyrell, with that term. I know I've seen it mentioned, the hag stone. I'm just not familiar with it in terms of mentions in folklore or in history. That doesn't mean, of course, that it wasn't a thing. It's just I'm not familiar with it. Michael Pike is in the house. Missed you there, Michael, did I? Hello to you, Michael. Great to see you. Mark Gordon, I need more room for my library. Don't we all? I mean, we don't need more room for your library. We need more room for ours. Never mind. Anthony, trying to be funny as usual. Yes, indeed. Anyway, good luck in your hunt for copies of The Way That I Went. Very worthwhile. Please don't let me forget to mention, before the episode concludes, please don't let me forget to mention The Way That I Followed. Briefly. Anyway, one more piece of reading. On the north side of the Boyne, 6 miles or so above Drogheda, on raised ground overlooking the river, is Brunebonia, the Royal Cemetery of Ireland in the Bronze Age, Neolithic, of which the leading monuments, the immense tumulus of Newgrange, is the finest thing of its kind in Western Europe. A great cairn of stones, nearly 100 yards in diameter at the base, and some 50 feet in height to its flattish top. The sloping edge is or was sustained by a continuous curb of great flat slabs set on end. And at some distance outside this rises what remains of a ring of great standing stones, each many tons in weight, which modern archaeologists refer to as the Great Circle. And we now know from the more recent excavations of Newgrange that that was a later addition to the Neolithic cairn being erected in the Bronze Age. Kees is logging in from Holland. Loving it. Brilliant stuff, Kees. You're very welcome along to Book Talk and to the Mythical Ireland Library, and I hope that you can stay with us. We generally do weekly live streams on a Monday evening, so you're very welcome to join us. Don't forget to have a look around the Facebook page and the YouTube channel. Give it maybe a like and a subscribe while you're there. Where was I? On the south side, a passage formed of large upright blocks, roofed with others, over 60 feet long, leads to a grand chamber made sub-cruciform by 3 recesses, and roofed with overlapping blocks, and a final keystone 25 feet above the floor. He's here describing the chamber of Newgrange. A large number of the stones bear incised markings, often of very bold design and deeply cut. These are in the form of spirals, lozenges, and many other forms, such as are often found on Bronze Age Neolithic memorials. There is no need to enter here into details of this stupendous monument, but it is interesting to discuss some of its less obvious features. This is a grazing country, and for many centuries cattle roamed freely about and over the mound. The consequent tramping is mainly responsible for its present external condition. We find that the curb of slabs 4 to 6 feet high, inside which the great mound of loose stones was once contained, is now buried to its upper edge by stones which have slid down from above, something that Professor Michael O'Kelly, during his 1960s and 1970s excavations of Newgrange, referred to as the Cairn Slip. That even the upper edge of the curbstones can be seen at all is due to a retaining wall, which is also called a revetment, some 5 feet high, built on top of it in recent times to prevent further slipping. A few years ago, the Office of Public Works, in which the monument is vested, excavated along the base of the curb for about a third of its circumference. Dr. McAllister and I were privileged to take part in this work, which was made under the direction of H.G. Leask, that's Leask, officer in charge of ancient monuments. We had to sink a trench for 6 feet through loose stones to reach the base of the curb, and it was evident that all the sloping ground between the curb and the flat surrounding field was made of material that belonged to the mound. The original mound sloped upwards from the top of the curb. To restore it to its pristine form, all the material now supported by the modern retaining wall built on top of the curb, and all of the slope outside the curb, would have to be restored to the top of the mound. This material is of such quantity that its replacement would make the mound much more conical and much higher than it is at present. I think that I think he was perhaps a little bit sort of mistaken in that regard, because I think that's one of the things that the excavation and restoration of O'Kelly tried to do, and it hasn't raised the profile of the mound greatly. A most imposing structure, and this great cone would rise not from the top of a flattish slope as at present, but from level ground running into the base of the curb, thus adding a further 6 feet or so to its height. One or two other interesting points came to light. Many of the buried stones of the curb bear incised ornament resembling the forms found in the chamber, but smaller and lightly cut, trivial indeed in comparison with the bolder scribings of the interior stones. Next, the stones of the curb towards the north of the mound have in many cases fallen outwards, and it cannot be seen whether any of these is inscribed. It will be remembered that one of the most remarkable of the scribed stones of Newgrange is a curbstone which is fallen, but which under an excavation has been made, which allows examination of the rich ornament on what might have been its upright face. I presume he is there referring to curbstone number 52, what I call the Orion Stone, fabulously decorated. You may have seen a picture that I shared from the Newgrange and Nowth page on Facebook in the past week of the summer solstice morning sun shining onto that stone magnificently, revealing its carvings. It's fabulous stuff. Then again, we were struck with the great quantity among the ordinary field stones of which the mound is composed of two extraneous elements. There were thousands of bits of white quartz, angular pieces some inches in diameter. The sharpness of their edges suggested that they had been quarried, and their quantity, we saw at least 20 tons in a limited excavation. Remember, this is in the 1930s. Negatived the idea that, like most of the stones, they had been obtained near the site. There is no quartz in the limestone rocks that extend south of the Boyne. They had been brought apparently from the Silurian area that stretches northward, and in which rocks veins of quartz occur. There is some ongoing debate about the source of the quartz at Newgrange, which has long been held to have been brought from the Wicklow Mountains, but which apparently it's been suggested that they may have originated on Rockabill and the islands off the coast, the east coast. And it has further been suggested that they may indeed have originated from this supposed Silurian area north of the Brunebonia complex. So it's interesting. It'll be something to watch through time. And again, we found about 1,000 rounded boulders of granite, egg-shaped or globular, from about half a foot to a foot in diameter. Granite is not found anywhere in this neighbourhood, though there is a considerable area of this rock on both sides of Carlingford Lough, and indeed it is now reckoned that it was brought from Rathcore / Templetown, which is a beach on the southern shore of Carlingford Lough at the north end of Dundalk Bay, a distance by sea and river to and from Newgrange of about 50 to 60 kilometres in each direction. But the rounded form of these granite boulders, probably more like 60 to 70 kilometres actually in each direction. Bernardine is in Maine, where it's very hot. And apparently, yes, okay, you like listening to my voice. Okay, that makes one of you. You should talk to my family. Kathy May is going back to work, and it's 106 degrees in Newcastle in Washington State. Take care, Kathy May, and you may want to catch up on the end of the episode, which will be recorded for YouTube and Facebook. And we'll see you next week. Nora Gaffney O'Connor is in the house, just back from the sea, a dip before bed. Love the summer. Yes, indeed. Nice to catch you. Yes, indeed, Nora. And what a fabulous day for it. A gorgeous evening. Really, really fabulous. Mary Ellen says she's loving it. Well, that's great. A good sign. And Mary Ellen, sorry, I clicked the wrong one. There is in the US. Brilliant. Very nice to have you along into the library. Lillian also is making me blush by saying she likes listening to my voice. But the rounded form of these granite boulders points to prolonged wave action on an exposed beach. The only place where such conditions prevail is on the shore of County Down, about Kilkeel and Annalong. Again, Prager's 1,000-mile or 1,500-mile jaunt across Ireland may not have taken him to Rathcore Beach, but I can assure you those stones are there, as I photographed and mentioned in my book, Newgrange Monument to Immortality. There can be little doubt that both the white quartz and the round granite boulders had some religious or mystical significance, and they were brought here from a distance. Absolutely right. White stones are a characteristic accompaniment of Neolithic interments, and round pebbles of other rocks are also sometimes found. But the amount and size of these offerings, if such they were, at Newgrange, have no parallel in Ireland. Nor is Newgrange all that Brunebonia has to offer. There is the smaller but still imposing tumulus of Dowth, less than a mile away, with many similar sculptured stones. Also that of Nowth, at present closed, and several small earthen cairns that have never been excavated. Of course, that has changed remarkably since this book was first published. There is still much to be done in the scientific exploration of this imposing mausoleum, and even though at this time there are 6 volumes of published work about Nowth, with a 7th about to be published, we could probably still say the same thing, that there's still much to be learned. Meath is rich also in Christian remains, as would be expected in so favoured an area, but these are well known, and I need not indulge in platitudes concerning them. Mellifont, Monaster, Boyce, Kells, Trim, etc., are names to the antiquary that connote abbeys, churches, high crosses, castles, and round towers. All are easy to reach and interesting to visit, and lie in pleasant, picturesque surroundings. Then on Slieve na Caille, away out to the west, near Old Castle, there is a second remarkable Bronze Age Neolithic cemetery, more than a score of cairns of stone on a windy hill, containing burial chambers showing rock scribings of the characteristic forms, and often identical with those of Newgrange. When they were excavated in 1867 to 68, they yielded many fragments of pottery and human bones, seashells, pieces of flint, rounded pebbles, and other accompaniments of Bronze Age sepulture. Unfortunately, the place is much exposed to the weather, and some of the carvings have suffered, but it remains a museum of the curious art of the Bronze Age, which he's, of course, we now know is the Neolithic. Then he goes on to talk about Tara. That is a sample of the wonderful The Way That I Went by Robert Lloyd Praeger. It runs to a total of, not a kick in the backside, as to say, not a kick in the backside of 400 pages. And if you have already in your possession a copy, then you are blessed. If you don't, you may want to acquire one. Let me just quickly have a look on Abe Books. Author Praeger, The Way That I Went. £25 from the UK, £24, nearly £25 with nearly £8 shipping from the USA to the United Kingdom. So there are a couple of copies there on ABE Books. That's not that expensive, so get yourself. Listen, I have a habit of looking for treasure, as you all know, and coming across it from time to time. Can I just let you in on a secret as to how much I paid for this? This is just between us. Don't mention it to anybody else. €2. I kid you not. Anyway, Praeger's journey around Ireland was followed years later. Let me just check in terms of dates, exactly how many years. 1990. So for over 50 years later, by another wonderful scholar and explorer, the late, great Professor Frank Mitchell. And he called it The Way That I Followed, in tribute to Praeger's work, The Way That I Went and The Way That I Followed. Frank Mitchell, in The Way That I Followed, Frank Mitchell, author of the Shell Guide to Reading the Irish Landscape, sets out, quote, to provide a companion volume, unquote, to Lloyd Praeger's most successful book, The Way That I Went, first published over 50 years ago. Armed with more scientific techniques than his predecessor, the author takes a continuous, if winding, route and wanders the length and breadth of Ireland, often accompanied by friends and colleagues, exploring the landscape as he goes and describing with infectious enthusiasm his discoveries and observations. Mitchell was another remarkable polymath. He was an archaeologist, he was an anthropologist, he was a geologist, had an interest in botany and birds and flora and fauna and everything. And another very erudite and interesting man. I never had the fortune to meet him. A good friend and follower of Mythical Ireland, Una Sheehan, who's a longtime friend of mine, was lucky enough to have met him and studied under him. So there you go. Also, the great Professor George Ogan, excavator of Nowth, was a friend and colleague of Professor Mitchell. I think they worked together on what was George's first proper first excavation, which was the site called Site T, or Cairn T, here in the Boyne Valley. The one you may have seen pictures of last week, which is aligned towards the summer solstice sunrise. And little could either Ogan or Mitchell have known at the time that Professor Ogan was about to embark on a remarkable odyssey of exploration and discovery at Knowth with his excavations. Now, $60 at Amazon, says Lexi. Yeah, Donna Ferrer says, I will listen to this in its entirety. Good stuff, Donna. It's lovely to see you, by the way. I'm not sure if I said hello earlier. I don't think I did. Yeah, fantastic stuff. €2. I know. But I'm very lucky. As I say, I have picked up some rare treasures in secondhand bookshops, and they are my favorite bookshops because of that, because of the ability to find stuff. Before we go, I did promise a couple of canine jokes. One was inspired by the picture you may have seen earlier that I shared of the sheep, all the sheep going into the field at Newgrange Farm. I was flying the drone there last week with the farmer, and he wanted me to take pictures and video of the sheep, and I did. So anyway, here goes. A farmer was moving sheep one day with his sheepdog. After they had moved the sheep into the new field, the farmer asked the dog how many sheep there were. 100, replied the dog. That's strange, replied the farmer. I only have 96 sheep. That's right, said the dog. I rounded them up. Sorry. And the other one is courtesy of my first cousin, James. I'm going to put you to shame, James, if I can remember it now. Yes, I was renewing my car insurance the other day, and over the phone, and was just completing the details of the transaction when the lady said, Mr. Murphy, do you have any pets? I said, yes, I have 2 dogs. She said, would you like me to insure your 2 dogs? To which I said, not sure why you do that. They can't drive. And that, as get it, says Tom King. Yes, a severe heat wave in where Miriam is located. Oh dear. Actually, my oak saplings are struggling a bit. The larger ones, believe it or not, the smaller ones got bitten by the frost, the late spring frost that we had in April or May, and lost their leaves. The 2 larger ones now are actually quite parched. I'm having to chuck water by the bucket load into them. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. Don't forget, please, if you would like, pre-order your Boyne monograph on mythicalireland.com. Hopefully, fingers crossed, going to print either tomorrow or on Wednesday, and hopefully available to dispatch from here within the next week or 10 days. I would say 10 days at the most, all going well. And don't forget to consider the idea of becoming a patron of Mythical Ireland and supporting the work. There is a 45-minute video for patrons only at the moment, with a long update about other things that are going on here in the background. And there will be a patron-only update now once a month by video, among many other rewards for patronage. Helen, thank you. Just pre-ordered. Thank you, Helen. Brilliant stuff. Can I contact you about a combination order, says Miriam. Yes, absolutely, Miriam. Please send me an email to mythicalireland@gmail.com, and we will absolutely sort that out, no problem. By the way, I should mention that I can take payment via PayPal if you don't like or you can't use a credit card on the secure shop on the website. Don't forget that I can also use PayPal. Just send me an email and we'll sort out the details. I can also use Revolut if you're so inclined, you know. Serena says, thank you for caring. Can I seek asylum in Ireland? Yes, indeed. And Ireland is the land of the welcome to the stranger. We know more than almost anybody the sad story of migration, a forced migration especially. So we tend to be very welcoming to the stranger. Very good evening to you all. Mary Hanrahan says wonderful stuff. Adina Sparks, stay safe, everyone. Yes, indeed. I'm glad to report that our vaccination campaign continues apace. I've had the first of 2 injections. I'm waiting. I had it on the 9th of June and I'm waiting. They said the second one would follow about 4 weeks later. So I'm waiting for word of my second injection. Things are opening up here, and thankfully the elderly people and those who are more at risk are not falling ill now. Those who have been vaccinated are not getting the virus. So hope ahead, folks, at this wonderful time of the year when the sun is at its maximum and speaks to us of hope and light and brightness. So we'll see you all very soon. Next week we'll be back with either Live Irish Myths or perhaps another episode of Book Talk. I do intend to continue absolutely the conversation series. Many people have been put forward as potential candidates for that. When I have a bit of time, when the Boyne monograph goes off, perhaps I will try to start organising a couple of those, and we'll see how it goes. But anyway, we will try to make it a weekly effort, because I know that in the couple of weeks where there were no live streams, that there were apparently a lot of disappointed people, certainly people who were saying it. In the meantime, Ikawa, it's not night time yet because the sun is actually, what time is it? Yeah, sun's still up. Doesn't set here till about 10 to 10. It's 9:30 here. Ikawa, Kulosov, sound sleep if you're going to sleep. But those who are watching in Australia, you have got your full day ahead of you. So don't fall asleep, especially if there's a wheel of a car or you're in work. Slán go fóill, which means bye for now. And the most important one of all, Toga Bugay. Take it easy. See you soon.